Have you ever wondered why you need to tip your waitstaff 15 to 20% every time you eat out? It's time to find out. It wasn't always like this. Do you ever think about why we always feel this undeniable need to tip the waiters whenever we visit a cafe or a restaurant? Aren't the waiters already getting paid? To find out the answers to all these questions, welcome to our journey through the intriguing history of tipping. From its early days facing resistance to becoming a norm in the 20th century, tipping has a fascinating tale to tell. But why does it matter? Understanding the roots of tipping sheds light on broader cultural and economic trends. It's not just about leaving a few extra bucks at the restaurant. It's about unraveling the fabric of society and economics. So, buckle up for an enlightening ride. And if you stick around until the end, you'll discover how current tipping practices impact both workers and consumers in unexpected ways. And hey, if you enjoy uncovering hidden gems of history like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay informed about more captivating stories from the past. Early resistance to tipping as an un-American practice.
Tipping, that is a practice deeply ingrained in American culture today, had a miserable beginning in the United States. Despite its long history in tipping faced significant resistance when it was introduced to America. The concept of tipping was perceived as un-American thing stemmed from various economic factors and the prevailing ideals of equality and democracy. Tipping traces its back to the European aristocracy ages. Wealthy individuals would offer gratuities to those in lower classes for their services, establishing a tradition that would eventually spread across continents. As Americans traveled abroad, they encountered tipping customs and brought them back home. In the 1800s, engagement in the United States to emulate European practices, resistance of tipping from Americans.
However, tipping encountered resistance from many Americans who viewed it as contrary to American values. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw tipping as undemocratic and indicative of class distinctions. Critics argued that tipping perpetuated inequality and placed the burden of fair wages on customers rather than employers. Following the Civil War, America experienced an influx of formerly enslaved individuals and immigrants into the labor force. Employers capitalized on this vulnerable workforce by offering low wages and encouraging tipping as a means of supplementing income. This shift in labor dynamics allowed businesses to minimize labor costs and maximize profits at the expense of workers' livelihoods. How tipping was institutionalized. The usual practice was institutionalized by the Pullman Company that played a pivotal role in institutionalizing tipping in the United States. By hiring formerly enslaved individuals to provide high-quality service on railroad cars, the company popularized the practice of tipping as a customary gesture for services rendered. Despite public debate and occasional legal challenges, tipping became increasingly entrenched in American society. The passage of the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938 established a minimum wage for certain industries, but food services remained exempt. Subsequent amendments extended minimum wage protections to restaurant workers, albeit with provisions allowing for a lower, tipped minimum wage. This system shifted the responsibility of fair compensation from employers to customers, perpetuating the reliance on tipping in the restaurant industry. Today, tipping remains a contentious issue in the restaurant industry. While it provides a cost-effective labor solution for employers, it also creates uncertainty and instability for workers who rely on gratuities to supplement their income. The prevalence of tipping reflects broader economic challenges within the service sector and raises questions about fair compensation and labor rights. The practice was further normalized by various factors. These factors included shifts in societal norms, changes in labor laws, and economic rationales. Shifts in societal norms. Tipping, once viewed with skepticism and disdain, gradually gained acceptance and even expectation as the century progressed. What was once seen as a foreign and aristocratic custom became increasingly commonplace in American society. The act of tipping transitioned from an optional gesture of appreciation to an anticipated part of transactions in various service industries. Changes in labor regulations, particularly minimum wage laws, played a pivotal role in shaping the economics of tipping. With the establishment of minimum wage standards, employers sought ways to minimize labor costs while maintaining profitability. Tipping emerged as a mechanism for businesses to offset these costs, shifting the burden of fair compensation from employers to customers. Additionally, tipping provided an avenue for workers to supplement their income in industries where wages were often insufficient to meet basic needs. Factors contributing to normalization. The rise of the service industry and cultural influences further propelled the normalization of tipping. As service-oriented businesses proliferated, tipping became ingrained in the transactional dynamics between customers and service providers. Cultural attitudes towards tipping evolved, with societal expectations increasingly dictating the practice's prevalence and significance in various contexts, as business owners shift the burden of wages onto consumers. Current tipping in America. Despite its widespread acceptance, tipping in America is not without controversy. The practice has been increasingly scrutinized for its potential to perpetuate discrimination and inequality. Instances of individuals being discriminated against based on race, ethnicity, gender, or other factors when receiving tips have brought attention to systemic issues within the tipping system. This scrutiny has led to growing calls for reform, with some advocating for alternatives such as incorporating gratuity into wages or adopting models similar to those in European countries where restaurant staff make a livable wage without tips. Many Americans, including restaurant owners, are recognizing the detrimental impact of tipping on both workers and customers. Ending the practice of tipping or reforming it to ensure fair compensation and eliminate discrimination is gaining traction as a necessary step towards creating a more equitable and inclusive society. The future of tipping culture. As we step into the future, the fate of tipping culture in restaurants hangs in the balance. With customers experiencing tip exhaustion, servers and bartenders grappling with their roles in a post-pandemic society, and restaurateurs facing tough decisions about employee compensation, the future of tipping is uncertain. But what does it hold? In a word, complexity. There's no one-size-fits-all solution on the horizon. Instead, the future of tipping will be shaped by a combination of factors including technology, government policy, and public sentiment. It's a landscape where $2.13 an hour is hardly a livable wage, and where many restaurants skirt tip credit laws, leaving workers struggling to make ends meet. The push for change is palpable. States like New York and cities like Portland, Maine, are seeking to ban sub-minimum wages, while Michigan's tipped minimum wage hangs in the balance. Even the District of Columbia aims to eradicate it by 2027. Federal laws are increasingly seen as the most effective way to ensure fair compensation for service workers. Yet, the debate over tipping persists. Customers express frustration with tipping screens, arguing that it's simply too much. Meanwhile, some restaurants, such as those in the Eastern Point Collective, are ditching tips altogether in favor of service charges, providing employees with a more stable income. And as the effects of record inflation hit diners' wallets, the once generous pandemic-era tipping is dwindling, particularly for takeout orders. What are the pros and cons of tipping? The practice, which is as old as dining itself, sparks debates and divides opinions like few others. Let's break down the pros and cons. Tipping acts as a powerful incentive for front-of-house staff to deliver exceptional service. The promise of a generous tip encourages servers and bartenders to go above and beyond, ensuring a memorable dining experience for patrons. In a system where hourly wages may not accurately reflect performance, tips offer an opportunity for workers to substantially boost their income. For many, tips can mean the difference between scraping by and living comfortably. On the other hand, this culture also draws some negative aspects. This culture has its own flaws. Various studies have revealed troubling biases in tipping behavior, with women and people of color often receiving lower tips than their white counterparts. This perpetuates inequalities within the service industry and fosters a culture of discrimination. Moreover, tipping creates a hierarchy in dining establishments, where certain demographics receive superior service based on stereotypes and biases. This not only undermines the principles of equality, but also contributes to systemic injustices. Harassment is another dark underbelly of the tipping culture. Reports of workers, particularly women, facing harassment in exchange for better tips have emerged. Highlighting the toxic power dynamics at play in the restaurant industry. Well, you all have been to restaurants as well. Can you guys think of some pros and cons as well? If yes, then share it in the comments below. Cultural variations of tipping. Tipping isn't just about exchanging money, it's a window into cultural attitudes towards service and compensation. Tipping norms are as diverse as the cultures they originate from. In some countries, tipping is expected and even considered mandatory, while in others, it may be seen as unnecessary or even offensive. For example, in Japan, tipping is often viewed as disrespectful, as it suggests that the service provided was not already of high quality. Conversely, in the United States, tipping is deeply ingrained in the dining experience and is seen as a customary way to express gratitude for good service. Perception of tipping as a reflection of service quality. For many, tipping serves as a direct evaluation of the service they've received. A generous tip is often interpreted as a sign of satisfaction with the quality of service, while a meager tip may indicate the opposite. In this sense, tipping becomes a form of feedback, rewarding exceptional service and signaling dissatisfaction with subpar experiences. However, this perception isn't without its complications. While tipping can incentivize good service, it can also place undue pressure on service workers to perform, leading to stress and anxiety. Moreover, the subjective nature of tipping means that it may not always accurately reflect the quality of service received. Factors such as personal biases, cultural differences, and even the mood of the customer can influence tipping behavior, making it an imperfect measure of service quality. Conclusion: whether tipping remains a steadfast tradition or undergoes transformative change in the future, one thing is clear: it is one of a heated topic for discussions. This was all from this video, and thank you for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content.